Hey there! I want to take just a couple minutes to talk about our first assignment, our first submission assignment, 1-7 submission writing notes. Now remember that this is a dual submission in which we have to sort of fill out the form that is in MindEdge, but then also upload in the appropriate area in our Brightspace learning environment. Within MindEdge, we're going to talk about how the assignment's presented, talk about the rubric, but also kind of go through the questions as well. We want to get to our assignment in MindEdge, and then what we're doing here is we're sort of exploring our choice for that reading assignment. As you scroll through, you can see you got your different options here: Mother Tongue, Me Talk Pretty One Day, and some lessons from the assembly line. Now you chose this by going through our quiz, which remember in the drop-down menu you can go back to any of our assignments, 1-5 quiz reading selection. Okay, so what we want to do here is open up that file and actually read and do kind of like a literal reading of it. Let's explore how we respond to it, and then kind of think critically about what the author's purpose is and who the author's audience is as well. And what we're going to be doing here is sort of constructing our writing notes right here within MindEdge. So we've read our piece and we've taken some preliminary notes, kind of explored how we're responding to it and thought a little bit critically about it. We want to actually answer some of the questions that we have in MindEdge, and we're going to do that before we review the rubric. We want to scroll through. Your screen's going to look a little bit different than mine because I'm looking through the instructor view, but if you have any questions at all, anytime, feel free to connect with me. What we want to do is actually type in here and type out the response. So what article did you select? Pretty easy question. Give us the name and the author of the article or the story or the article, whichever it is, in the space, and then we actually want to click submit. So be sure to click submit response, and that's going to change your prose from that white box to a green box. And then you kind of scroll through and do the same thing for every other question. Number 2, we're asking what we think based on our little reading of this selection. What do you think that author's purpose was, and how did you arrive at that decision? So why do you think that author wrote this piece? What were they trying to do? What was the message or the lesson that they were trying to get across? Number 3, we kind of want to explore 3 key points, and you can go ahead and use the language one possible key point is. Key points are pieces of evidence that support the author's purpose. In that article, what do you think are 3 key points that support that purpose that you said in question 2? So you want to go through your article and find 3 passages, 3 sentences, 3 examples that support your claim of that purpose. So in my example here, I am saying that I believe Amy Tan's purpose for writing this piece is to explore her connection and maybe even her feelings of shame that she has towards her mother's use of broken English throughout her life. So I would say, what are 3 key points that support my conclusion that that is Amy Tan's purpose? So that's kind of what you want to do with question 3. Then question 4 is analyzing the audience. Who do you think, there's my fan, who do you think that this author is writing for? Who do you think is in their audience? For example, I believe that Amy Tan's audience, it includes women like herself who may have gone through similar experiences, or perhaps anybody who is interested in language and the cultural experience that new speakers have. And then you also want to address some challenges that that author may have had in connecting with that audience. As we move forward with the term, we're going to continue to explore both their audience, but also our own audience as well. And we'll talk more about that as we move forward. Okay, and then here's an important part. Remember, this is a dual submission. You need to not only click submit underneath each question, you also need to download this into a Word document. We can click right on download, and it's going to give us a prompt to save as you would. And it actually handles it really nicely. It gives you your name and what the assignment is. Click save. And then we actually want to kind of open this up and edit it as well. Okay, so we want to do more than just hit submit and save. We want to open up that Word document and kind of reformat it too, so it looks a little bit more presentable. Let's put our name on there. We're getting in the habit of making actual traditional essays with this. And again, we'll talk more about that as we move forward throughout the term. So the key thing here is make sure that you click submit under each question. Also download and save this assignment, and be sure that we prompt that we post it and submit it in Brightspace as well. Okay, and if you have any questions at all with that, please let me know. Maybe post a question in the general questions discussion forum, so that maybe our peers can have some value with that question as well. So that's how we do the assignment and some of what the questions are. Now let's talk about what we're actually going to be graded on here. I want to make sure that you can see it, and you can. This is the digital version of our rubric. You can also download the Word version as well if you prefer. And we're going to kind of just go over what our grading expectations are for this assignment. We had an overview of what this is, and then we have our prompt materials, which we just went through in Lined Edge. But we're also going to be graded with what we call critical elements. And we've got a couple different versions of them. We've got proficient, needs improvement, and not evident. The goal for all of our assignments is, of course, to be proficient. But if for any reason we are not, I will offer you suggestions for improvement and actionable support so that we can get to where we want to be. So what are we going to be graded on with this assignment in terms of critical elements? First of all, we're going to be graded on, this one's an easy one, the name of the article and the author of that article. So if you tell us that you are doing Amy Tan's mother tongue, you're 100% proficient in there. So let's make sure whichever one of the three options that you go with, you include the name and the author so that we know what we're talking about here. We also want to explore the author's purpose. So do you clearly determine a purpose to be addressed in the analysis essay, and the purpose is derived from one of those provided articles? So do you tell us what the author's purpose is that you're going to be exploring through this critical analysis? So you do that and you're 100% proficient. Then we also want to explore that article as we talked about those author's key points. So do you present them and the rationale that will be helpful in supporting the validity of your claim? So do you tell us what the author's purpose is, and then do you tell us what those key points are and how they support that author's purpose? And then we want to address whether or not you talk about the author's audience. Did you identify who that article was written for and what challenges there may be? And remember, we're going to talk about this as we move forward, both for the author and for ourselves. But for this assignment, it's who is the author's audience. And then this last one isn't one of those prompt questions. It's articulation of response. And what that means is, are you using good grammar? Are you following those rules of English? Are you using full sentences, making sure your I's are capitalized, and that kind of stuff. And so that is our rubric and kind of a rundown of our first assignment. If you have any questions at all, feel free to connect with me anytime. Of course, you can post any question that you have on the general discussion forum, and also connect with the great people at the SNHU OWC. Hang in there, you got this. This is our first step. You're going to do great. It's going to be an amazing term.